basically the military was saying, Joint Chiefs were saying to, if we help Britain and we give them any of our stuff, they'll just fall into the hands of the Nazis. We shouldn't do this. There was a parallel to that. When France fell, Churchill wanted the Air Force, Royal Air Force, to go all in to try and save France. And Hugh Dowding, Chief Air Marshal of the Royal Air Force, said no. He refused to do it. And Churchill was enraged, almost fired him. He did fire him after the Battle of Britain was over, just out of pipe. Dowding, of course, was completely right. They would have thrown the planes away for nothing, and the planes that Dowding saved Britain and saved civilization. He really was the man who sort of saved Western civilization, actually. He doesn't get the credit he deserves. He does have a nice spot in Westminster Abbey, but he's not. He's like, he belongs on the column. There's an empty column in Trafalgar Square, and he belongs on the top of it. But the parallel to that, you see, they were afraid if we gave all this stuff to Britain, it would just fall into Nazi hands. Roosevelt proposed a deal in the summer of 1940 to give Britain 40 surplus World War I destroyers in exchange for islands in the Caribbean and bases, places like Jamaica and Bermuda and so on. And there was a tremendous resistance to it. People say that this is going to wind up in the hands of the Nazis. What's the point of this? And there was a huge fight over this. They eventually did pass it. It was very dicey for a long time. There wasn't a lot of help in 1940, in the summer of 1940. It began to unravel more and more as it went along. When it really actually caught steam was after the election. The election was a very bitter election, actually. Roosevelt was running against Wendell Willkie, and the Republicans assumed that he would be totally reverse everything that Roosevelt did. Willkie was the president of the Southern Company, which was a giant holding company that owned the electric utilities that TVA took over. And it was really no one before the war who was more virulently anti-Roosevelt and anti-New Deal than Willkie. But when Willkie got into basically started running for office and he got briefings on what was going on, he sort of realized the situation, in fact, internationally was really, really scary. And after the election was over, and he ran on an isolationist platform, he really attacked Roosevelt in an awful sort of way. There was campaign slogans and signs that Roosevelt meant dictatorship and war, and this was really awful. It was an ugly campaign. But after it was over, he flipped over, and he did so fairly quickly and began basing Roosevelt's international policies. Basically, the Lend-Lease bill passed that winter because Willkie came out in support of it and began calling Republican Congress and saying, "Look, you got to support this bill." And that's how it passed. And it might not have passed without Willkie's support. The draft bill was passed that year. It was a year later. It was renewed by a single vote. That's how close it all was. So there was a tremendous resistance to the U.S. getting involved and a tremendous fear of what it was going to mean. But sure, wars are scary. They can bring in a lot of changes in society that you don't want. As Lincoln said, no war ever left a country where it found it. It's true. But the international danger from what the Germans were doing was so much greater that it overweighed any other consideration. So it was a horrible problem, an incredibly tough problem that Roosevelt faced in the summer of 1940. Really, really bad. So, yeah, no, please.
This book dovetails with The Darkest Hour, the movie that just came out about this period.
Yes.
Precisely.
The Battle of Britain is going on while the story takes place, literally on a day-by-day basis. So the sense The Darkest Hour is the background to the story. It doesn't hear too much in the story about the Battle of Britain, but it is going on, and you see a few things in reference to it in the story. Right. Anybody else have any other questions? Or?
Larry, I just want to make a comment. I'm sitting here listening to the questions, and so many people in this room know that timing is everything in politics. I got to say, timing is everything with this book.
It is. I absolutely have to agree. It's an astonishing thing how there's some kind of grand Jungian synchronicity or collective cosmic consciousness or the will of God, whatever it is. It's just somehow, I do think at moments somehow I in this book was saved for this moment. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I have to tell you, it's kind of weird. It is, but it's coming out, and it's coming out when all the stuff is peaking. You can't plan it. You can't plan it. You couldn't. Yeah. Patrick?
Did you keep the film rights?
Yes, we did.
Good question.
Oh yes, no, we kept the film rights, and my agent is going to be. That's the next job for my agent. He's going to be doing it. They're waiting for sales numbers, and then they're they're going to try and sell it. Would, you know, maybe the motion pictures or television miniseries. I've actually, I took film classes when I was at NYU, and I know how to write screenplays. I've done a complete screenplay of the story, and I've also done a television pilot, like a miniseries for it. And I also have done a complete, what they call a show Bible, which explains the whole story for the subsequent episodes that goes with the pilot screenplay. So that's all ready to go, basically to drop the hat. And I you know, we'll see how that all works out. I don't know.
Wow.
That would be huge. And you know, we'll bring Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, right.
That's the next ultimate sort of thing that's going to happen here. But probably not. But you never know. Who knows? I mean, he did basically drop a project, I will say, to make The Post, which because he made that that was a spec screenplay. Wasn't produced in the studio.
By a first-time writer.
By a first-time writer, came in over the transom, and they saw it and said, "Oh man, this is so timely," and they boom right out there, and here is The Post out there in the theaters right now. And I haven't seen it, but I'm told it's really great.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm told it's really, really good. Yeah.
This is a question relating to Saratogians. I'm born and raised in Saratoga, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room that can relate to being native of this area or having lived in this area for a long time. And so let me just say a few things and ask for a show of hands. I really resonate with, I haven't read the book yet, Lawrence, but I look forward to reading it. And there's so many things that I resonate with. I have a picture of my mother taken in 1939 in front of the United States Hotel.
Oh.
My parents met here in Saratoga at the in the what used to be the theater at the top of City Hall. They were both in the Saratoga Players Theater Club, and they got married in November 6, 1940.
Whoa.
Very
Wow.
interesting moment aligning with your book.
Oh yeah.
My dad was one of the managers out in the clubs on the lake, and my cousin ran Riley's.
Oh,
And
wow.
the Saratoga magazine did a story about Joe King and all the people who worked there a couple of years ago, I think. And Joe King is still with us in his 90s.
90s, yeah.
I should have invited him to come tonight.
Awesome.
So I have all kinds of connections. I have a family member who had one of those houses up on North Broadway. Just, it goes on and on. So I'd love to see a show of hands of how many people feel that their personal connection with Saratoga resonates with some of the stories in this book. I'm sure I'm not alone. A few of us.
Almost.